The alien ships moved through space like silverfish swimming through dark water. Ambassador Kethavara stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, watching the small blue planet grow larger on the main screen. Earth looked peaceful from this distance, with white clouds swirling over green and brown continents. "Another primitive world," said Commander Yextal, studying the readings from their sensors. "Basic radio waves, simple satellites, chemical rockets. They barely made it to their own moon." Kethavara nodded slowly. In her 200 years as a diplomat, she had seen this pattern many times. Young species always looked the same when the Zephyrian Consortium found them, confused, frightened, and eager to please their new alien visitors. "Begin standard first contact procedures," she ordered. The crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had done this 47 times before. The communication officer activated the universal translator and began broadcasting peaceful messages in mathematical sequences. Prime numbers, then simple equations, then basic concepts like friendship and trade. It was a gentle way to introduce primitive minds to the reality of galactic civilization. "We are receiving a response, Ambassador," reported the communications officer, her antenna-like ears twitching with surprise. They are responding in our own language." Kethavara's blue skin darkened with confusion. "That is impossible. Run a diagnostic on the translator." "I have, Ambassador. The humans are speaking fluent Zephyrian Common. They say they welcome us to their system and invite us to dock at something called Luna Station." The bridge fell silent except for the soft humming of the ship's engines. In all of Kethavara's experience, no primitive species had ever learned their language without years of careful teaching. "Perhaps they captured one of our exploration probes," suggested Commander Yextal. "They might have learned from our computers." "Show me this Luna Station," Kethavara ordered. The main screen shifted to show Earth's moon. Orbiting the gray surface was a massive space station, its metal corridors and docking bays gleaming under the sun's light. Ships moved around it like busy insects, but these were not the crude chemical rockets their sensors had detected from the outer system. "Those are fusion drives," whispered the science officer. "And that station, it's larger than our capital shipyards." Kethavara felt a cold sensation in her stomach, something her people called the warning whisper. But she had her orders from the High Council. The consortium must make contact with this species and bring them into the galactic community. It was for their own good and for the good of all civilized worlds. "Send our acceptance," she decided. "We will dock at their station." The journey to Luna Station took 6 hours. As they approached, Kethavara noticed more things that troubled her. The human ships moved with precision that spoke of advanced computer systems. The station's design was elegant and efficient, not crude like most primitive constructions. A human voice came through their communication system, speaking perfect Zephyrian Common with only a slight accent. "Welcome, Ambassador Kethavara. I am Director Sarah Chen of Luna Station. We have prepared quarters for your delegation and look forward to our discussions." "How do they know my name?" Kethavara asked her crew. No one had an answer. The docking process was smooth and professional. As Kethavara walked through the connecting tunnel, she noted that the human station's atmosphere was perfectly matched to Zephyrian needs. The temperature, the gas mixture, even the lighting had been adjusted for her comfort. Director Chen waited for them at the airlock. She was a small human with dark hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to see everything. Behind her stood several other humans, all wearing simple blue uniforms that somehow looked more official than the elaborate robes of consortium diplomats. "Ambassador Kethavara," Director Chen said, bowing slightly in the traditional Zephyrian greeting. "We are honored by your visit. Your people's reputation for wisdom and fairness is known throughout this region of space." The cold sensation in Kethavara's stomach grew stronger. Humans should not know about Zephyrian reputation. They should not know about traditional greetings. They should barely know that other species existed. "You are very well informed for a species we have only just contacted," Kethavara said carefully. Director Chen smiled. "We humans are curious by nature. We like to learn about our neighbors before we introduce ourselves. The next few days passed in a blur of meetings and cultural exchanges. The humans were everything a diplomat could hope, for the polite, eager to learn, and excited about joining the galactic community. They asked intelligent questions about trade routes, immigration policies, and technological sharing agreements. But with each conversation, Kethavara's unease grew. The humans knew too much. When she mentioned the Andorian Mining Rights Treaty, they nodded knowingly. When she explained the complex system defense pacts, they asked detailed follow-up questions that showed deep understanding of interstellar politics. "How long have you been watching us, she finally asked Director Chen during a private meeting on the third day. The human woman set down her teacup and looked directly into Kethavara's eyes. "Ambassador, that's a very interesting question. What makes you think we've been watching anyone? Your knowledge is too complete. Your preparations too thorough. Your station too advanced for a species that has supposedly never left its home system." Director Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood and walked to a large window that looked out at Earth. The blue planet hung in space like a jewel, peaceful and beautiful. "Let me ask you a question, Ambassador," the human said. "When the consortium discovers a new species, what is the standard procedure?" Kethavara recited the protocols she knew by heart. Initial observation from a distance. Cultural and technological assessment. First contact when the species shows readiness for galactic membership. Integration into consortium structure for mutual benefit and protection. And if a species refuses integration, the question hung in the air like a dangerous weapon. Kethavara had never been asked this before because no species had ever refused. The benefits of consortium membership were obvious: protection, technology, trade opportunities, cultural enrichment. That has never happened," she said. "Director," Chen turned back to face her. "But if it did happen, what then?" Kethavara thought of the consortium fleet, of the massive ships that patrolled the galaxy keeping peace and order. She thought of worlds that had been protected when their governments became unstable. She thought of species that had been relocated when their home systems were needed for strategic purposes. "We would ensure their safety," she said, but the words felt hollow. "I see." Director Chen returned to her seat. "Ambassador, let me be direct with you. We humans have indeed been watching the galaxy for some time. We've seen how first contact works. We've observed the integration process. We've studied the outcomes." "That's impossible. Our sensors would have detected—" "Would they?" Director Chen touched a control on her desk. The lights in the room dimmed, and suddenly the walls became transparent, revealing the vastness of space beyond. "We've had some time to develop our technology. We're not quite as primitive as your initial scan suggested." Through the transparent walls, Kethavara could see human ships moving around Luna Station. But now, with the new perspective, she realized these vessels were far more advanced than she had first thought. Their hulls reflected sensor waves in ways that would make them nearly invisible to standard detection systems. "We want to join the galactic community," Director Chen continued. "But we want to do it as equals, not as subjects to be protected and guided. We believe the universe is big enough for many different ways of thinking." Ambassador Kethavara stared out at the human ships and felt the warning whisper in her stomach become a roar. She was beginning to understand that first contact was not going according to standard procedures at all. The deception unfolds. The negotiations continued for 2 more weeks, but Ambassador Kethavara felt like she was walking through a maze where the walls kept moving. Every day brought new surprises that challenged everything she thought she knew about human civilization. During a tour of Luna Station's research facilities, she saw technology that shouldn't exist on a primitive world. The humans showed her their computers, which processed information faster than anything in the consortium archives. They demonstrated their medical equipment, which could heal injuries that would leave permanent damage using Zephyrian techniques. "How did you develop these advances so quickly?" she asked Dr. Martinez, the chief scientist. The elderly human smiled and adjusted his glasses. "We've always been good at learning from others, Ambassador. When you have good teachers, you can make rapid progress." But you had no teachers. This is first contact. Dr. Martinez exchanged a look with Director Chen. Is it? That night, Kethvara called an emergency meeting with her own staff aboard their ship. Commander Yexatal and the other officers gathered in the conference room, their faces showing the same confusion she felt. Something is very wrong here, she began. These humans know too much, have too much, understand too much. I want a complete sensor sweep of this system. Check everything. Every planet, every asteroid, every piece of space dust. Intelligence. Officer Vexron worked at his station for hours, sending out scanning beams and analyzing the data that came back. As the night progressed, his expression grew more and more troubled. Ambassador, he said finally, I'm detecting some very strange things. There are structures throughout this system that don't match our initial surveys. What kind of structures? On Mars, there are underground facilities, massive ones. The asteroid belt has mining operations that are far too sophisticated for a chemical rocket civilization. And Jupiter? He paused, checking his readings again. Jupiter has industrial complexes in orbit. Big ones. Kethvara felt her scales, turning cold. How long have these been there? Based on the wear patterns and energy signatures, decades, maybe longer. Commander Yextal leaned forward. That's impossible. Our long-range scouts would have detected major industrial activity. Not if they were designed to be hidden from our sensors, Vexran replied quietly. The next morning, Kethvara confronted Director Chen directly. They met in Chen's office, a comfortable room with windows looking out at Earth. On the walls were pictures of human history, cities, wars, art, and exploration. We know you've been hiding your true capabilities, Kethvara said without introduction. Our scans have detected industrial facilities throughout your system. Director Chen nodded calmly. Yes, we have been developing our infrastructure for some time. How long? How long have we been industrializing our system? About 60 years for the major projects. Kethvara's mind raced. 60 years ago, our records show no signs of advanced human technology. That's correct. Then how? Director Chen stood and walked to one of the wall displays. She touched a control and the picture changed to show a star map. Red dots marked consortium worlds, blue lines showed trade routes, and green areas indicated patrol zones. 63 years ago, Chen said, one of your exploration probes had a malfunction. It crashed on our moon instead of continuing to its next target system. Kethvara stared at the star map. You found a probe. We found a probe containing detailed information about galactic civilization. Star charts, cultural databases, technological specifications, and historical records. It was like finding a library that contained everything we needed to know about our neighbors. The Zephyrian ambassador sank into her chair. Exploration probes were supposed to be unhackable, their data encrypted beyond any primitive species' ability to decode. Our computers weren't advanced enough to break your encryption, Chen continued as if reading her thoughts. But we had something your probe designers didn't expect. What? Time and the absolute determination to learn everything we could before you came back. Chen touched the display again, and the star map zoomed in on a section near Earth. Your probe's memory banks contained 60,000 years of consortium history. We learned about every first contact, every integration, every species that joined your civilization. And you saw the benefits of membership, Kethvara said hopefully. We saw the pattern. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of air circulation systems. Through the window, Earth continued its slow rotation, blue and white, and seemingly peaceful. What pattern? Kethvara asked, though she was beginning to fear the answer. Director Chen brought up a new display showing species integration timelines. Species A, discovered in 2847, integrated by 2851, home government dissolved by 2855, population relocated to resource extraction colonies by 2860. She switched to another timeline. Species B, discovered in 2923, integrated by 2925. Traditional, culture banned by 2930. Children separated from families for proper education by 2935. Another timeline appeared. Species C, discovered in 2967, refused integration, protective intervention ordered 2968, species extinct by 2969. Kethvara wanted to argue, to explain that these were special cases, that sometimes difficult decisions had to be made for the greater good. But looking at the data presented so clearly, she could see the pattern that the humans had discovered. The consortium doesn't create member species, she whispered. It creates subjects. That's a harsh way to put it, Chen said gently. I'm sure your people have good intentions. But the results speak for themselves. In 60,000 years, how many member species have retained their original governments, their traditional cultures, their right to say no? Kethvara tried to think of examples but couldn't find any. Every species she knew had been helped to adopt better systems, more efficient cultures, more rational ways of thinking. We spent 60 years studying your probe's data, Chen continued. We learned your languages, your technologies, your military capabilities, and your standard procedures. We prepared for every possible scenario. What do you want? Kethvara asked. We want what we told you from the beginning. We want to join the galactic community as equals. We want trade, cultural exchange, and cooperation. But we want it on terms that let us remain human. Director Chen sat back down across from the ambassador. We know the consortium will not accept this. Your entire system is built on control and uniformity. You can't allow one species to be different because it would make others ask why they can't be different too. The truth of those words hit Kethvara like a physical blow. The High Council would never accept human independence. They would see it as a threat to everything the consortium had built over thousands of years. What happens now? She asked. Now you go back to your leaders and report what you've learned. You tell them that humanity wants to be friends, but we won't be servants. You explain that we've had 60 years to prepare for whatever decision they make. Director Chen stood and walked back to the window. Outside, human ships continued their busy work around Luna Station. And then we see what kind of neighbors the consortium really wants to be. That evening, Kethvara transmitted her report to the High Council. She tried to present the situation as diplomatically as possible, but there was no way to hide the basic facts. Humanity was technologically advanced, politically organized, and completely unwilling to accept traditional integration. The response came back within hours. Return immediately. Battlefleet Zeta is being prepared for protective intervention. As her ship undocked from Luna Station, Kethvara looked back at Earth through the viewport. The blue planet looked so peaceful, so vulnerable, but appearances, she had learned, could be very deceiving. The High Council chamber on Zephyr Prime had not seen such tension in over a century. 7 species sat around the curved table, their representatives showing signs of stress in different ways. The Zephyrian skin had darkened to deep blue. The Corvan delegates' feathers were ruffled and agitated, and the silicon-based frecks were glowing brighter than normal. Supreme Chancellor Nexavara stood at the center of the chamber, reading Ambassador Kethvara's report for the 3rd time. The holographic display showed Earth hanging in space, looking innocent and harmless. Let me understand this correctly, said Councillor Thex of the Corvan Republic, her voice sharp with anger. This primitive species has been spying on us for 60 years? They learned our secrets from a crashed probe and said nothing? Ambassador Kethvara stood before the council, still feeling shaken by her experience at Luna Station. Yes, Counselor. They used the information to develop their technology and prepare for eventual contact. And now they demand to be treated as equals, rumbled Counselor Vrex 9 of the Silicon Collective. The massive crystal being's voice echoed through the chamber like grinding stone. They want the benefits of membership without accepting proper guidance. Supreme Chancellor Nexavara set down the report and looked around the table. In his 300 years of leadership, he had guided the consortium through wars, disasters, and the integration of dozens of species. Never before had he faced a situation like this. What exactly are their military capabilities? asked Counselor Dexry of the Aquatic Federation. Kethvara hesitated. Unknown, Counselor. They have advanced technology, but they were very careful not to show us their defensive systems. I suspect they have capabilities we didn't see. Suspect is not good enough, snapped Counselor Thex. Did you see weapons? Warships? Military installations? No direct military displays, but... Kethvara paused, remembering Director Chen's confident manner and Dr. Martinez's knowing smiles. But they acted like people who were not afraid of us. Even when I hinted at the consequences of refusing integration, they seemed prepared. Supreme Chancellor Nexvara activated the chamber's main display system. Star charts filled the air, above the table, showing the location of Earth and its surrounding systems. Earth sits at a strategic location, he announced. Control of their system would give us access to 3 new sectors and shorten trade routes to the outer rim by 15%. We cannot allow an independent human government to interfere with galactic commerce. Counselor Vrex 9 pulsed brighter. There is another concern. If we allow one species to refuse integration, others may demand the same treatment. The Battalion colonies have been restless. The Centauri Republic still maintains some independence. If word spreads that the humans successfully resisted... The Chancellor nodded grimly. The consortium's power was based on unity and order. If species began choosing their own paths, the entire system could collapse into chaos and conflict. We have maintained peace for 3,000 years, he said. We have ended war, poverty, and suffering on 10,000 worlds. We cannot allow one stubborn species to destroy everything we have built. The vote was unanimous. Within hours, orders went out to every consortium fleet commander in 3 sectors. The largest battle fleet in modern history would be assembled and sent to Earth. The humans would be given one final chance to accept proper integration. If they refused, protective intervention would begin immediately. Admiral Zexthor received his orders aboard the flagship Righteous Harmony while patrolling the Vegan trade routes. The massive dreadnought was over 2 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy a planet's surface. It was one of 50 similar ships that would make up Battlefleet Zeta. 200 ships, he said to his second-in-command, Captain Yexnall. The largest military deployment in 3 centuries. Is it necessary, Admiral? The younger officer asked. They're just one species on one world. Admiral Zexthor studied the tactical reports on his private screen. The humans had hidden their technology for 60 years and successfully deceived a consortium diplomat. That showed dangerous intelligence and planning ability. Any species clever enough to hide from us for 60 years is clever enough to be dangerous, he replied. We take no chances. The fleet assembly took 2 weeks. Ships arrived from across the galaxy, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels. The asteroid mining station at Kepler 442 became a temporary base as the massive force prepared for the journey to Earth. Intelligence reports continued to arrive during the preparation period, but they were frustratingly incomplete. Long range. Sensors detected normal activity in the Sol system. Radio transmissions, spacecraft movements, energy signatures consistent with an industrial civilization. Nothing that suggested major military preparations. They're either very confident or very stupid, Captain Yexnall observed as they reviewed the latest data. Confident, Admiral Zexthor replied. Ambassador Kethvara was clear about that. They acted like people who expected this confrontation and were ready for it. The Admiral had fought in dozens of campaigns during his career, from border skirmishes, with unknown raiders to the suppression of the Andromedan Rebellion. He had learned to trust his instincts about enemy capabilities, and his instincts were warning him that this mission would not be simple. 3 days before departure, he received a priority message from Consortium Intelligence. Their deep space monitoring stations had detected unusual energy signatures from the Sol system, brief pulses that might indicate advanced scanning technology. They're watching us, he told his senior staff during the final briefing. They know we're coming. Let them watch, said Captain Mortex of the battleship Inevitable Victory. 200 ships against one primitive world. They can see their doom approaching. Admiral Zexthor was not so confident. Something about this entire situation felt wrong, like a trap that was too obvious to avoid. But orders were orders, and the High Council had made its decision. Battle Fleet Zeta departed for Earth on schedule, their formation stretching across light years of space as they entered hyperspace. The journey would take 6 days at maximum speed. On the 4th day, they began receiving transmissions from Earth. Not the panicked surrender messages that usually came from species facing protective intervention, but calm professional communications on open frequencies. Battlefleet Zeta, this is Earth Traffic Control, came the first message. We are aware of your approach. Please maintain your current course and speed. Luna Station is preparing to receive your commanding officer for final negotiations. Admiral Zexthor stared at the communication display. Earth Traffic Control? Luna Station preparing to receive him? These were not the words of a frightened primitive species facing overwhelming force. Sir, reported his communications officer, we're also receiving detailed navigational data for the Sol system, jump coordinates, gravitational warnings, asteroid, positions, recommended approach vectors. They're helping us navigate to their system. Yes, sir. The data is extremely detailed and appears to be completely accurate. Captain Yexnal looked confused. Why would they help us attack them? Admiral Zexthor didn't have an answer. In all his years of military service, he had never encountered enemy behavior like this. The humans were acting like they were welcoming guests, not preparing to resist invasion. On the final day of the journey, as Battlefleet Zeta prepared to drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, one more transmission arrived from Earth. Admiral Zexthor, came a calm human voice. This is Director Sarah Chen of Luna Station. We regret that negotiations could not reach a peaceful resolution. However, we want you to know that Earth bears no ill will toward the consortium or its member species. We simply ask that you reconsider your course of action. There is still time to choose a different path. The transmission ended with coordinates for a meeting location in the outer system, far from any populated areas. Arrogant, muttered Captain Mortex. They still think they can negotiate after we've brought a battle fleet to their door. But Admiral Zexthor felt that familiar cold sensation that experienced officers learned to recognize as a warning. The humans were too calm, too prepared, too confident. Either they were completely delusional about their chances, or they knew something that Battlefleet Zeta did not. All ships prepare to drop out of hyperspace, he ordered. Full combat readiness, expect anything. As the swirling lights of hyperspace faded and normal space returned, Admiral Zexthor got his first look at the Sol system since the crisis began. The sun blazed yellow and bright in the distance with planets arranged in their predicted orbits. Earth hung like a blue jewel in the darkness, peaceful and beautiful, and completely undefended. Sir, reported the sensor officer, I'm detecting normal civilian traffic around Earth and Luna Station. No military vessels, no defensive formations, no weapons platforms. They appear to be going about their regular business. Admiral Zexthor frowned at the tactical display. This made no sense. Where were the human defenses? Where was their military? Begin standard patrol sweep, he ordered. I want every planet, moon, and asteroid scanned, find their fleet. Admiral Zexthor had been staring at the tactical display for 6 hours, and it still made no sense. Battlefleet Zeta was spread throughout the Sol system, 200 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy, and they could find no sign of human military forces. Status report, he called to his senior officers. Captain Yexnal consulted his datapad. All patrol groups have completed their sweeps. We've scanned every planet, every moon, every significant asteroid. No hidden bases, no camouflage ships, no weapons platforms. What about their industrial facilities? Extensive but civilian. Mining operations, manufacturing plants, research stations. All of it matches what you'd expect from a peaceful industrial civilization. Admiral Zexthor rubbed his temples. Either the humans had no military at all, which seemed impossible given their confident behavior, or they were hiding it better than any species in galactic history. Sir, interrupted the communications officer, We're receiving a transmission from Earth. They're requesting permission to send a small diplomatic vessel to discuss terms. After we brought a battle fleet to their system, they want to negotiate? Apparently so, sir. The Admiral considered his options. The High Council's orders were clear: force human compliance or begin protective intervention. But something felt fundamentally wrong about this entire situation. Grant permission, he decided. One small ship, maximum crew of 10, no weapons. 30 minutes later, a sleek human vessel emerged from behind Earth's moon and began approaching the consortium fleet. It moved with the smooth efficiency Admiral Zexthor had learned to associate with advanced propulsion systems. "That's interesting," muttered the sensor officer. "Their ship is using some kind of drive system I don't recognize. It's not fusion, not antimatter, not anything in our databases." The human ship docked with the flagship Righteous Harmony without ceremony. Director Seo. Sarah Chen came aboard with only 2 assistants, all wearing simple civilian clothes. She seemed remarkably calm for someone facing 200 alien warships. "Admiral Zexthor," she said, offering the traditional Zephyrian greeting. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I hope we can still find a peaceful solution." They met in the Admiral's private conference room, a Spartanly decorated space designed for military efficiency. Through the large viewport, Earth hung in space like a reminder of what they were fighting over. "Director Chen," the Admiral began, "I must be direct with you. The Consortium High Council has authorized the use of force if necessary. Your world's continued independence is not acceptable to galactic stability." "I understand the Council's position," she replied, "but I think there are some facts they may not have considered." She produced a small device from her pocket and set it on the conference table. "May I?" Admiral Zexthor nodded, and Chen activated the device. A holographic display filled the room, showing detailed schematics of consortium ships, weapons systems, and military doctrine. "This is classified information," the Admiral said, his voice tight with alarm. "Yes, it is. We've had 60 years to study your probe's databanks, remember? We know the specifications of every ship in your fleet, the capabilities of every weapon you carry, and the tactical doctrines you follow." Chen manipulated the display, zooming in on technical details that should have been impossible for humans to know. The Righteous Harmony, for example. Quantum torpedo tubes, plasma cannon arrays, neutronium armor plating. Very impressive for a ship designed 80 years ago. Our ships are regularly updated, with technology that's 50 years behind what we developed last Tuesday. The conference room fell silent. Admiral Zexthor studied the human woman's face, looking for signs of deception or bluffing. He found only calm confidence. "You're claiming technological superiority over the entire consortium?" he asked. "I'm not claiming anything, Admiral. I'm simply pointing out that assumptions can be dangerous." Chen touched another control and the display changed to show the current positions of all consortium ships in the system. But overlaid on that tactical map were red zones marking areas that human sensors were apparently watching. "Every ship in your fleet is under constant observation," she said. "We know their positions, their heading, their power levels, and their weapon status. Your flagship has a small problem with the port plasma conduit, by the way. Nothing dangerous, but it's reducing your power efficiency by 3%. Admiral Zexthor's blood ran cold. The port plasma conduit problem was classified information that only his engineering staff should know about. "How?" "We've been watching, Admiral. We've been learning. We've been preparing." Chen stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the blue marble of Earth. 60 years ago, we found your probe and realized we weren't alone in the universe. We also realized that we were probably going to have visitors eventually, and that we needed to be ready for them. Ready how? Ready for every possible scenario. Peaceful contact, which we tried. Trade negotiations, which we offered. Cultural exchange, which we welcomed. And she paused, still looking at her homeworld. Military conflict, which we hoped to avoid. The Admiral felt that familiar cold sensation growing stronger. "What are you saying?" Chen turned back to face him. I'm saying that Battlefleet Zeta is not the only military force in this system. She touched her device again, and the holographic display changed to show the space behind Earth's moon. The area appeared empty on all consortium sensors, but Chen's display revealed something else entirely. Something massive was hidden in the moon's shadow. That's impossible, Admiral Zexthor whispered. Our sensors show nothing there. Your sensors show what we want them to show, Chen replied. We've had 60 years to develop stealth technology specifically designed to fool consortium detection systems. The thing behind the moon began to move, and as it emerged from shadow, Admiral Zexthor felt his understanding of the universe shift. The human vessel was enormous, easily 5 times the size of his flagship, with a hull that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Meet the UES Leviathan's Wake, Chen said quietly. Titan-class deep space vessel, the first of her kind, though not the last. Alarms began sounding throughout the righteous harmony as the massive human ship became visible to consortium sensors. Admiral Zexthor could hear his crew shouting reports and confirmations, their voices tight with disbelief. "Sir!" came his tactical officer's voice over the intercom. "We have a massive contact emerging from behind Luna. It's huge, sir." Admiral Zexthor activated his communicator. "How big?" 7 kilometers long, sir. Mass readings are off the scale. I'm detecting weapon systems, but nothing matches our database profiles." The Admiral looked at Chen, who had returned to her seat and was watching his reaction with interest. "1 ship against 200, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "1 ship you can see," she corrected. "Admiral, let me be very clear about something. The Leviathan's Wake is not alone. And even if she were, the technology gap between our civilizations is significantly larger than your initial assessment suggested." She activated her device one final time, and the display showed detailed intelligence files on every consortium, world, their defenses, their fleet positions, and their strategic capabilities. "We know the location of every major consortium base," she said. "We know your supply lines, your communication networks, your political structures, and your military doctrines. We know which species are loyal to the High Council, and which ones are restless under consortium rule." Admiral Zexthor stared at the intelligence data scrolling past. Information that should have taken decades of espionage to gather was laid out before him in perfect detail. "How?" he asked. "The same way we knew you were coming, Admiral. The same way we knew about your battle fleet before you left Kepler 442. The same way we've been watching galactic civilization for 60 years without anyone knowing we existed." Chen stood and gathered her device. "We are very good at observing, analyzing, and preparing. It's what humans do when we're faced with a challenge." The conference room's intercom crackled with urgent reports from the bridge. The Leviathan's Wake was scanning the consortium fleet with sensors that penetrated their shields and armor like they weren't there. Other contacts were appearing throughout the system as more human ships decloaked from positions that had seemed empty moments before. "We still outnumber you," Admiral Zexthor said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Numbers matter, Admiral, but so does technology, tactics, intelligence, and preparation. The question you need to ask yourself is not whether you can destroy us, but whether the cost of victory would be acceptable to the High Council." She walked toward the conference room door, then paused and looked back. "We wanted to be friends, Admiral. We tried to negotiate. We offered trade, cultural exchange, and cooperation, but the consortium requires submission, not partnership." The door opened, and Chen stepped into the corridor. "You have 1 hour to withdraw your fleet to the outer system. After that, we will demonstrate why attacking Earth was a mistake that the galaxy will remember for a very long time." As the human diplomat left his ship, Admiral Zexthor looked out at the Leviathan's Wake and realized that Battlefleet Zeta was no longer the hunter. They had become the prey. Admiral Zexthor stood on the bridge of the righteous harmony, watching his tactical display transform from a simple military operation into something he had never seen before in 40 years of service. What had appeared to be empty space around Earth was revealing itself to be filled with hidden human vessels. "Status report," he called to his sensor officer. 17. No. 24 new contacts, sir. They're decloaking throughout the system. Size classifications range from destroyer equivalent to... The officer paused, checking his readings again. Sir, some of these ships are reading as large as space stations. Captain Yexnall approached with a data pad full of reports from the fleet. Admiral, we're receiving similar readings from all patrol groups. The humans have been hiding an entire fleet in plain sight. How many ships total? Current count is 47 and climbing, sir, but that's not the concerning part. Admiral Zexthor looked at his second-in-command. What is? The technology readings don't match anything in our databases. Their power signatures are completely unfamiliar. Our computers can't even classify most of their weapon systems. Through the main viewport, the Leviathan's wake hung in space like a dark monument to human engineering. 7 kilometers of advanced technology that had somehow remained invisible until its crew chose to reveal it. Sir, interrupted the communications officer. We're receiving a transmission from the human flagship. It's not Director Chen this time. Put it through. A new voice came through the ship's speakers, older and more gravelly than Chen's diplomatic tones. Admiral Zexthor, this is Admiral Rebecca Torres, commander of the Seoul Defense Fleet. I'm transmitting detailed information about every ship in your battle group. Please review it and consider your next actions carefully. Data began flowing to every consortium ship in the system. Technical specifications, crew complements, weapons capabilities, current damage status, and even personal information about senior officers. Information that should have been impossible for any external force to obtain. They know everything about us, Captain Yexenal whispered, staring at his personal file displayed on the tactical screen. Details about his family, his service record, his psychological profile, even his favorite foods. Admiral Zexthor activated the fleet communication system. All ships maintain current positions but power down weapon systems. Do not take any action that could be interpreted as hostile. Sir? Asked Captain Mortex from the battleship Inevitable Victory. Are we surrendering? We're avoiding a massacre, the Admiral replied grimly. Another transmission came from the Leviathan's wake. Admiral Zexthor, this is Admiral Torres again. We're going to demonstrate something for you. Please observe the asteroid designated Sol 4 Delta 7 in your navigation charts. Admiral Zexthor's sensor officer quickly located the asteroid, a small rock about 3 kilometers wide, floating in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. Found it, sir. Standard metallic asteroid, nothing unusual. Keep watching it, Admiral Torres advised. A beam of energy, barely visible to the naked eye, reached out from the Leviathan's wake toward the distant asteroid. When it struck, the rock simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris field, no residual energy signature. One moment there was an asteroid, the next moment there was empty space. What happened to it? Captain Yexnall asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The sensor officer checked and rechecked his instruments. It's gone, sir, completely. Mass, energy, everything. It's like it was never there. That was our smallest weapon, Admiral Torres announced calmly. We have others. Admiral Zexthor felt the last of his tactical confidence evaporate. In 4 decades of military service, he had never encountered a weapon that could make matter simply disappear. The implications were terrifying. Admiral Torres, he said, activating his communication system. What are your terms? Simple. You will withdraw your fleet to the outer system immediately. You will return to consortium space and report to your High Council that Earth is capable of defending itself. And you will recommend that future contact between our civilizations be conducted through proper diplomatic channels. And if we refuse? There was a long pause before the human admiral responded. Admiral, in the past hour, we have demonstrated that we can hide an entire fleet from your sensors, that we know everything about your ships and crews, and that we possess weapons beyond your current understanding. Do you really want to find out what else we can do? Admiral Zexthor looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were experienced officers who had served in dozens of campaigns, but he could see fear in their eyes. They were facing something completely outside their military doctrine. Admiral Torres, may I ask how many ships you have in total? In this system, enough in other systems? There was what sounded like a slight chuckle in the transmission. Let's just say that Sol is not the only system where humans have been busy for the past 60 years. The implication hit Admiral Zexthor like a physical blow. If humans had been secretly observing galactic civilization for 60 years, they could have established hidden bases anywhere. You're in other systems? We're explorers, Admiral. We've been exploring. Captain Yexenal leaned close to his commander. Sir, if they have forces throughout consortium space. The Admiral nodded. Every military base, every trade route, every important world could potentially be under human observation. The strategic implications were staggering. Admiral Torres, I need to consult with my fleet commanders. Of course, you have 30 minutes. The conference call with his senior captains was brief and decisive. Every ship commander reported the same things: unknown human technology, detailed intelligence about their vessels, and weapons capabilities that defied understanding. Recommendations? Admiral Zexthor asked. Captain Mortex, the most aggressive of his commanders, spoke. First, Admiral, they may be advanced, but we still outnumber them 5-1. If we coordinate our attack— With what? Interrupted Captain Yexenal. They made an asteroid disappear, Mortex. They know everything about our ships down to minor technical problems. They've been watching us for 60 years. What exactly do you think we can do that they haven't already prepared for? We follow orders and complete our mission, Mortex replied stubbornly. Orders based on intelligence that was completely wrong, said Captain Vexara of the cruiser Swift Justice. The High Council sent us here thinking we were dealing with a primitive species. We're not. Admiral Zexthor listened to his officers' debate and realized that the decision was ultimately his. He could order an attack and hope that consortium numbers and firepower could overcome human technology. Or he could admit that this mission had been based on false assumptions from the beginning. He thought of the asteroid that had simply ceased to exist. He thought of Director Chen's calm confidence during negotiations. He thought of Admiral Torres's casual mention of human forces in other systems. All ships, he announced on the fleet. Frequency: prepare for withdrawal to the outer system. We will maintain defensive positions pending further orders from Consortium Command. The retreat took 3 hours. As Battlefleet Zeta moved away from Earth toward the edge of the Sol system, human ships shadowed them at a respectful distance. The massive Leviathan's wake remained near Earth like a dark guardian. When they reached the designated position, Admiral Zexthor sent his report to the High Council. He tried to explain the situation objectively, but he knew how it would sound. To the politicians back on Zephyr Prime, the largest battle fleet in modern history had been outmaneuvered by a species that was supposed to be primitive. The response from Supreme Chancellor Nexavara came within hours. Maintain position. Reinforcements are being prepared. Under no circumstances are you to withdraw from the system. But Admiral Zexthor was a practical military officer, and he understood the reality of the situation better than the politicians who gave him orders. Earth was not going to be conquered by consortium forces. The humans had been preparing for this confrontation for 60 years, and they were ready. Crusade. Days later, Ambassador Kethavara arrived aboard a fast courier ship, carrying new instructions from the High Council. They met in the Admiral's quarters, both looking tired and worn by the stress of the situation. They want me to try negotiating again, she said without preamble. The Council believes that if we offer enough concessions, the humans might accept a modified integration agreement. Admiral Zexthor poured 2 glasses of Zephyrian brandy and handed one to the ambassador. What kind of concessions? Autonomous government, cultural preservation, limited consortium oversight. Basically everything they asked for originally. Then why didn't the Council offer that in the first place? Kethavara took a long sip of her drink. Because it would set a precedent. If humanity gets special treatment, every other member species will want the same thing. The Admiral walked to his viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were probably watching consortium space, gathering intelligence and preparing for whatever came next. Maybe that wouldn't be such a bad thing. he said quietly. The negotiations took place on neutral ground, a small space station in the asteroid belt, built specifically for the talks. Director Chen returned as